Stop scrolling. This message was placed in front of you on purpose. There is a voice that has followed you your entire life. Not loud, not dramatic. It does not shout, but it has never stopped speaking. And what it keeps saying quietly, persistently, beneath every noise and every distraction, is this: you were made for something more than this. You have always known it, and you have spent years trying to silence it, because believing it felt dangerous. Because what if you were wrong? What if that voice was just pride, dressed up as purpose? I am here to tell you tonight, that voice was not pride. That voice was a prophecy. And in the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly why everything that has felt like a detour in your life was actually a direct path. I'm going to give you the spiritual framework that explains the loneliness, the waiting, the seasons that made no sense. And I am going to hand you the declaration that finally aligns your mouth with what heaven already decided about you before your name was ever spoken on this earth. Stay until the very last word. What I have for you at the end of this message is not a motivational quote you can find anywhere else. It is a specific, targeted activation for the specific kind of person who was meant to find this. And if you leave early, you leave before the most important part. Your future self needs you to stay. Let me tell you about a man named Joseph. He was 17 years old when he had a dream so vivid, so specific, so real, that it felt less like sleep and more like instruction. In that dream, he saw his future, not a vague blur of success, but a precise, detailed vision of who he was going to become and the weight he was going to carry. He did not ask for the dream. He did not earn the dream. God simply gave it to him, and then everything fell apart. His own family turned on him. The people who should have championed him, protected him, celebrated him. They stripped him of his coat, threw him into a pit, and sold him to strangers for 20 pieces of silver. He ended up in a foreign country, in a foreign house, working as a servant. Then, when he did everything right, when he stayed faithful, when he protected his integrity at the cost of everything he had, he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. Years passed. He interpreted a dream for a man who promised to remember him, and that man forgot him completely. 2 full years, forgotten in a cell, with a calling he couldn't explain, and a promise that had not moved an inch toward fulfillment. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly before God right now. Does any part of that story feel familiar to you? Have you been in a season where you did everything right, and it still went wrong? Where the people closest to you could not see what you carried? Where you were passed over, overlooked, placed in a situation you never deserved? And somewhere in the middle of it you started to wonder, did I misunderstand? Was I imagining things? Did God forget about me? I know some of you have not just wondered that. Some of you have been living inside that question for months. For years, the confusion is not small. It sits on your chest in the morning. It follows you through rooms full of people who seem to have it figured out. It whispers to you at night that maybe you are the exception to the promise. Maybe the calling was real for someone else, but not for you, not anymore. That is the lie I am here to dismantle tonight. Not gently, completely. Here is what nobody tells you about the chosen ones in Scripture. Their stories are not clean. They are not linear. They do not follow the path that makes sense to human logic. And the reason is terrifying in the best possible way. God is not building a career. He is building a person. Joseph did not need to know the logistics of becoming second in command over Egypt. He needed to become the kind of man who could hold that authority without being destroyed by it. He needed the pit to learn that his identity was not his coat. He needed the prison to learn that his integrity was not contingent on his circumstances. He needed the forgotten years to learn that his timeline was not his to control. Every single thing that looked like abandonment was actually formation. Every wall that appeared to be blocking him was actually a corridor, leading him deeper into the specific character that his specific destiny required. Think about this very carefully. The calling God places on a life is not just about what you will do. It is about who you must become to do it without breaking. And that becoming, that slow, often painful, often invisible process of being shaped from the inside out, cannot be rushed. It cannot be bypassed. It cannot be downloaded in a weekend seminar or unlocked by the right prayer said the right way. It happens in the exact seasons you have been begging to escape. That is why Jeremiah 1-5 does not say before you were skilled, I chose you. It does not say before you had it together, I selected you. It says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. The selection happened before you had a single qualification, before you had a single failure, before you had anything to offer or anything to regret. God looked at every soul that would ever walk this earth, and he designated yours for a specific weight, a specific assignment, a specific impact that no one else was made to carry. That means the enemy cannot use your past to argue against your calling. He cannot present your failures as evidence. He cannot point to your limitations as disqualifications. Because the verdict was written before any of those things existed, he is arguing with a decision that was already sealed before he had any access to your life. Your loneliness is not a wound. It is a credential. Your isolation is not rejection. It is protection, specifically calculated to keep you away from environments that would have shaped you into someone smaller than what you are called to be. The rooms that could not hold you were not failures. They were filters, and you passed every single one. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what is the one season of your life that felt like pure loss, that you are only now starting to understand differently? I read every single one, because your answer might be the exact thing someone else scrolling through these comments needs to see today. But I have to tell you something that most messages in this space will not tell you, because most messages want to make you feel good. I want to make you free. And those are not always the same thing. The calling is not comfortable. It was never designed to be. You have been praying for the crown while quietly hoping to skip the consecration. You have been asking for the open door while quietly hoping to avoid the fire that produces the person who can walk through it. And I understand that every human being who has ever carried a significant calling has stood in that same tension, desperate for the promise to arrive, terrified of the process that makes the arrival possible. But here is what I need you to understand about the nature of weight-bearing things. A bridge is not built quickly. The deeper the canyon it must span, the longer the construction takes, and the more invisible work happens underground before a single visible beam is raised. The foundation has to be sunk deep, deeper than anyone watching from the outside can see. Deeper than even the builder sometimes wants to go, because the weight it will eventually carry demands that level of depth. If the foundation is shallow, the bridge falls the moment it bears its first real load, and the people depending on it fall with it. You are not a decoration, you are a bridge. And God is not willing to raise the visible part of your life before the invisible foundation can hold what he intends to place on it. Not because he does not love you, precisely because he does. He is the only one in the room who knows the full weight of what is coming, and he refuses to send you into that future as a version of yourself that would collapse under it. This is why the pressure you have been feeling is not punishment. It is preparation. This is why the waiting has not been empty. It has been full of things being built in you that you cannot yet see and that you will not fully appreciate until the day you need them, and they are there. The compression you have been under is producing something in you that ease never could. And here is the part that should stagger you when you let it land. Joseph's pit lasted 2 years. His prison lasted years more. But the morning God was ready. The morning the preparation was complete, and the assignment could begin. Everything changed in a single day. Not gradually, not slowly. In a day, Pharaoh sent for him, and by sundown, the man who had been forgotten in a cell was standing in authority over an entire nation. Your suddenly is coming. But it will only be sudden on the outside. On the inside, you have been building toward it for every single day of your waiting. Now I need to address the thing beneath the thing, because it is one thing to hear all of this and nod. It is another thing entirely to actually live from it. And the reason most people hear the truth about their calling and still go back to living smaller than that truth. The reason the message lands and then the Monday morning comes and nothing has changed is not because they didn't understand it. It is because there is an older story running underneath. A story that has been running for so long. It feels like identity rather than narrative. For some of you, that older story sounds like this. I am the one who always gets close, but never quite arrives. For others, it sounds like, people like me do not get to have lives like that. For others still, the calling might be real, but something in me is fundamentally too broken to carry it. These are not your stories. They are agreements. An agreement is different from a fact. A fact exists whether you believe it or not. An agreement only has power because you have given your consent. And the moment you withdraw that consent, the moment you stop signing your name to the lie, its power over your life collapses. Not gradually, immediately. You did not come to this earth to manage a diminished version of yourself. You were not formed in the womb with a built-in ceiling. The smallness you have been living in is not your natural size. It is the result of years of squeezing yourself into spaces that were not designed for you, and slowly, painfully, accepting the shape of those spaces as your own. I want to speak directly to you now, and I want you to hear this as clearly as you have ever heard anything. The version of you that keeps apologizing for taking up space, that is not humility. That is an agreement with a lie. The version of you that keeps shrinking before you walk into a room, that is not modesty. That is the accumulated weight of every voice that told you that you were too much, and the tragic choice to believe them over the voice that told you that you were set apart. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. True humility is thinking accurately about yourself, which means seeing what God sees when He looks at you. And what God sees is not your failures, not your limitations, not the years you wasted or the opportunities you missed. What He sees is the designation He placed in you before time began. What He sees is the investment He has been making in you through every season you thought He had forgotten you. What He sees is the person His hands have been building, and He does not build things He does not intend to use. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not the exception to the promise. You are being finished. There is a moment in every designated life where the transformation stops being something that happens to you and starts being something you choose. For Joseph, that moment came in the cell. At some point, Scripture does not give us the exact day, but the evidence is in what came after. Joseph made a decision. He decided that the pit did not define him. He decided that the false accusation did not define him. He decided that the forgotten years did not define him. He chose to remain faithful, not because faithfulness was being rewarded, but because faithfulness was who he had decided to be regardless of the reward. That internal choice, that quiet, unseen, unwitnessed agreement with who God said he was the real turning point. Long before Pharaoh called for him, long before the door opened, in the dark, in the waiting, Joseph stopped arguing with heaven about his identity. And I believe that is exactly where you are right now. Not on the other side of your breakthrough, not in the palace yet, but standing at the threshold, at the exact moment where the decision gets made, not out loud, not in front of anyone, but in the deepest part of who you are, whether you will finally stop arguing with heaven about your worth. The threshold is not a feeling. You will not feel ready. Feelings follow decisions, they do not precede them. The threshold is not a sign. You will not get a miraculous confirmation from the sky before you are required to agree with the truth. The threshold is simply this: the moment you stop letting the older story win. The moment you look at your history, the pit, the betrayal, the forgotten years, the seasons that made no sense, and instead of seeing evidence of abandonment, you see evidence of formation. The moment your mouth begins to say what heaven has always said about you, that is the threshold, and everything changes on the other side of it. So here is what I want you to do right now. Not when you feel more ready, not when the circumstances are better. Right now, place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat, that rhythm that has continued through every pit, every prison, every forgotten season, every moment you were certain you were finished. That heart is still beating because the assignment is not over. You are still here because what you carry has not yet been delivered. And today is the day you stop treating that truth as a distant hope and start speaking it as a present reality. Speak this out loud. Speak it with the full weight of someone who is done apologizing for their existence. I am not behind. I am being prepared. I am not forgotten. I am being formed. I am not broken. I am being finished. Every season that felt like loss was foundation being laid in me that I could not see. Every room that rejected me was protecting me from a destination I was not yet equipped to inhabit. Every painful waiting was producing in me a depth of character that ease never could have built. I am set apart. I am designated. I am positioned, and my breakthrough is not coming. It is here. I receive it now. If something broke open in you while you were watching this, if something in your chest shifted, if you felt the weight of something being named that you have been carrying for years without words for it, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment right now and tell me the specific moment in this message that hit you. Tell me what you are walking through. Tell me what you are waiting for. I read them, every single one. Because this community is not built on performance and highlight reels. It is built on real people, in real seasons, choosing to believe real things about themselves before the evidence shows up. And if you know someone who is in the pit right now, someone who is in the waiting, someone who is carrying a calling they can barely articulate, and a discouragement they can barely manage, share this with them today. Not because I need the views, because you might be the exact person God is using to remind them that they are not forgotten. Subscribe so you do not miss the next message. Every word on this channel is placed here for a specific kind of person. If you found this, you are that person. And there is more where this came from. You are not alone in this. You never were. and you are closer than you think.